Now we get to start with our content, and what we're going to be talking about today is Salesforce DX. We're actually calling this Salesforce DX 201, Advanced Implementation for ISVs. My name is Vivek Chawla. I'm joined today by my colleagues Peter Martin and Danny Chang. And before we begin, just that quick reminder that Salesforce is a publicly traded company. Please make any purchasing decisions based on generally available features and information, and not on any forward-looking statements that might be made during today's presentation. And as I mentioned moments ago, today's presentation is titled Salesforce DX 201, Advanced Implementation for ISVs. You don't need to have a lot of hands-on experience with Salesforce DX to benefit from today's talk, but there are some conceptual prerequisites that will be helpful. For example, we're not really going to talk about, how to access your developer hub or basics of using the Salesforce CLI. We're not going to be getting too much into scratchwork basics like push and pull. We're going to assume you have an idea of what those are. Continuous integration, continuous delivery, core concepts. Basically, if you saw CI/CD and you knew what that was, even if you've never implemented continuous integration or delivery, you'll know enough if you just at least have the basics of the concept. And then finally, first generation packaging. That's our current packaging or packaging one, whatever you would like to call it. Hopefully, since this is an ISV audience, I'm pretty sure most everyone has a working knowledge, at least, of first generation packaging. But if you need a refresher on any of these, we've got some links here that takes you right to the appropriate documentation. Now, if you are new to Salesforce DX in general, there are some great resources that are available to you while you're getting ramped up. So when you're ready to get hands-on, if you follow these steps in order from left to right, it's going to be a great way for you to get started. Now, I'll pause again to remind everyone that these slides will be shared and the recording will be shared after this webinar. But having said that, if you are taking screenshots, there are two slides that you do not want to miss. This is one of them, and then another one's going to come up at the end of the presentation. So if you want to take a screen grab this. If you do need to get some help getting started and getting hands-on with Salesforce DX, these are some great resources. Okay, so now that we've covered what we're not going to talk about today, let's take a moment to look at what we are going to talk about. And we're going to start with a quick introduction to the Salesforce DX TE expert team. And then we're going to look at one particular challenge that a lot of ISVs face when adopting Salesforce DX. And then 3 reasons why, as an ISV, you should adopt Salesforce DX, all challenges be damned. To help you with that, we're going to introduce an ISV-centric model for implementing Salesforce DX. That's something we're really excited about. Peter Martin's actually going to spend some time and walk us through this. So we're going to see a demo of all this, and we'll see what we're talking about. And then we're going to close things out with any remaining time with questions. And speaking of questions, please be sure to start queuing them up. Ask your questions using the GoToWebinar questions panel as we're going through. Our colleague Danny Chang is going to be monitoring the questions, and he'll answer them over chat whenever possible. And any questions that we don't get to over chat, or if we don't get to at the end of today's session, will be answered in the ISV Tech Enablement group in the partner community. All right, so with that, who and what is the Salesforce DX TE expert team? Well, as I said earlier, my name is Vivek. Peter, Danny, and Case, who's on the line, but who's part of our team, we're all ISV technical evangelists. Now, within the ISV Tech Enablement team, we are also the group of TEs, tech evangelists, who are responsible for helping ISV partners and other tech evangelists learn, understand, and get the most out of Salesforce DX. Our team's mission statement for 2018 should give you an idea of what we're all about, right? And so it's this. We are here to help ISV partners adopt Salesforce DX by providing concrete prescriptive examples and frameworks that are specific to ISV use cases while working closely with product teams to ensure ISVs have an internal voice. And if you notice, there's a few areas I've highlighted there, and there's a word that keeps repeating itself, and that's ISV. Now, what that means is that our team, this TE expert team, we're looking at Salesforce DX from a very ISV-centric point of view. But that's not to say that what we're going to cover today isn't relevant to SI partners or customers. I'll be honest, I think a lot of what we've done is going to be very useful to them. So even if you're not an ISV partner, stick around, because I think what we're going to share is going to be worth your time. Just keep in mind where our point of view comes from. All right, to wrap up introductions, Danny's going to talk to you really quickly about some of the Salesforce DX tech enablement resources that partners have available to them. Danny, why don't you talk about p.force.com/DX?
Sure, Vivek. Hi, everyone. We just wanted to let you know that we have a revamped Salesforce DX education page on the partner community. That includes the latest sessions from Dreamforce, some new blog posts, and anything else you might want to know about Salesforce DX. So after the webinar, if you want to learn more, please go and check out the URL on the page, p.force.com/DX. All right, back to you, Vivek.
All right, thanks, Danny. And believe it or not, I think that page is not it's not gated behind a partner community login, so anybody can actually view that page and the resources we have on that page. So feel free to check it out. Okay, let's dive in and let's talk about a challenge, one very specific one that a lot of ISVs face when adopting Salesforce DX. And to do that, it's helpful to think about our developer tooling and our developer experience before Salesforce DX. And I'll be the first to admit that before Salesforce DX, our developer tooling was one of the more primitive parts of our stack. We might have given you the digital equivalent of sticks and rocks, but hey, it was enough to get the job done. And a lot of people have been successful with it, so that's great. And really, that's to your credit. The community of Salesforce developers, partners, customers, you guys found a way to make the sticks and rocks work. Then we brought you Salesforce DX. And Salesforce DX is way better than sticks and rocks. It's modern, it's standards-based, it's flexible, it's extensible. It's a toolkit that lets you do everything that you were doing before and so much more. But for a lot of developers, especially those who had perfectly adequate sticks and rocks solutions, the reaction's been a little bit like this. It's great that we have all the power and flexibility in the toolkit, but without a clear blueprint of what to do next, this much choice can be overwhelming. So what if we did this instead? We take this incredible, flexible, extensible toolkit, we keep it, only now we show you how to make something awesome. In other words, we give you the Legos, and we give you the blueprint for building a Millennium Falcon. And hopefully this takes our developers from huh to wow. And as Danny Chang knows from doing previous presentations with me, I do have a soft spot in my heart for all things Star Wars. So, hence, you'll see the name Falcon appear again and again in things like you'll see in a bit. But let's talk about 3 reasons why, even with some of those difficulties, right? Even with needing to help being shown the way, why should ISVs start adopting Salesforce DX today? And really, the first reason is one of the core strengths of Salesforce DX itself. Salesforce DX is way better at organizing metadata source. And you might have heard of this happy soup problem before, basically where all of the customizations that you build in an org get locked up and smushed up and packed up into one big soup. That all works, so it's a happy soup, but it's still soup. Now, for customers, the recommendation is to start using unmanaged packages to begin organizing happy soup, but ISVs are already using packaging. I mean, it's where we live. So we've got to find a better way to organize source before it even gets to the packaging org. And Salesforce DX is very good at letting us do this. And that brings us to packaging 2, or second generation packaging. And this is the part of Salesforce DX that every ISV partner I've talked to is most excited about. All you have to do is say multiple packages with the same namespace, and ISV developers start doing a happy dance. And the thing is, packaging 2 is not going to be ready, not going to be GA until winter 19. It's near the end of this calendar year. So one of the things that you could do to start getting ready for packaging 2 right now is to refactor your code or kind of build it from the ground up if you're a newer partner, so that it's clearly segmented. And even if it's all still managed in one managed package right now. And as already mentioned, Salesforce DX can make that organization part easier. And that helps you be ready for packaging 2 when it comes. And then reason number 3, and this is actually a very unique benefit for ISVs. Scratch orgs can have namespaces. Not just any namespace, Scratch orgs can have the namespace that you use in your packaging org. This is going to allow developers to build code for your package as if you're actually doing it in your packaging org, if you're doing development in your packaging org. And this is very useful, especially if your managed package includes namespace lightning components. Pardon me. Sorry about that. There are a number of hacks that people have had to do in their CI systems, where you strip namespaces out of your code and put them back in once you push things back to your packaging org. So all of that extra work that you might have been doing in your current CI process, that goes away with Scratch orgs because of this ability to namespace your Scratch orgs. So very, very powerful reason to adopt Salesforce DX, especially for ISVs. Oops, sorry, I went too far. All right, so I said I had 3 reasons that ISVs should adopt Salesforce DX today, but I've actually got a bonus for you. And it's basically the fact that adopting Salesforce DX does not have to be an all or nothing proposition. You can dip your toe in the water by just starting to use the Salesforce CLI and VS Code. You might go from there to leveraging the CLI for continuous integration and delivery. I can tell you from firsthand experience, this is way easier with the CLI than it was with Ant. So even if that's all you did, it's a big upgrade. And then finally, there's the all-in model if you want to go that way, and that's modular development with projects, Scratch orgs, and automated packaging. Now, those first two methods on the left, there's a ton of great resources, webinars, blogs, Trailhead, that'll help get your toe in the water and do those initial CLI continuous integration connections. But that all-in option, there hasn't really to this point been a good model for that, especially for ISVs. And that's actually what we want to address with the work we're doing today. And essentially what we've done is we've created what we call the SFDX-Falcon playbook. Falcon because of that Millennium Falcon thing. And this is an end-to-end prescriptive model for ISV application design and developer workflow using Salesforce DX, feature management, Git, and continuous integration. And that's a whole bunch of words to basically say we've built a model that hopefully makes adopting Salesforce DX a lot easier for you as an ISV. So, there's lots of ways to implement Salesforce DX and this end-to-end development lifecycle. Let's take a look at what that actually means. And what we're talking about is, starting with the Salesforce CLI, starting with Scratch orgs. It's starting with your developers, working on features, and when they've got them ready to go, they commit to a version control system. There's some sort of pull requests here. We talk a lot about Git, so we're using that language, but essentially it's merge conflict detection and handling merge conflicts. Basically, how do you get your code from multiple developers into one clean branch? And once you have that, how do you build it? How do you make sure it works? How do you test it? How do you do that automatically so that it saves developers time and makes your software quality higher? And then finally, as an ISV, the end game is how do we get this into a packaging org, and how do we get a package version upload? So this is what we're going to talk about today, and let's start with that part all the way on the left, and that's the the use of or handling of source and projects on your local developers' machines. And we'll start by actually showing you the default Salesforce DX project directory structure that you get. So what you see here, this is exactly what you get. Actually, with the classes and objects aren't there. It's really just Aura when you create a project using Force Project Create. But this is the default. This is what you get. And you'll notice there's that Force app directory. That's in the language of Salesforce DX. That's a package directory in the project. And this is what you get by the default. And really, this is still happy soup. I mean, it's happy soup with a little flavoring of Salesforce DX, but it's still happy soup because it's all in one place. So what we've done with SFDX-Falcon is, try to rethink this and look at what a core project and directory structure would look like for an ISV using Salesforce DX. And really, the first thing to note is that this isn't just your Salesforce DX project root. This is also your VCS repository root. Now, I've been talking in general terms, VCS rather than saying Git. The SFDX-Falcon model uses Git and GitHub, and from this point forward, I'll start just saying Git and GitHub. But it's important to note that Salesforce DX can be used with any VCS and any host. So it's not just Git and GitHub, even though that's what you'll see us talking about. Okay, moving forward. First thing you'll see is that we've separated metadata and SFDX source. We've got specific directories where you're going to put those things. And it's really to point out the fact that you will need metadata API source somewhere in your project, either when you first pull it or when you push it to orgs that aren't Scratch orgs like packaging. It's definitely going to be something that you're going to have in your project. So we call that out and we set up the structure for it right from the start. You've also got the SFDX source directory, and that's basically going to hold all of the Salesforce DX package directories that are referenced in your SFDX project JSON. Now, inside of that SFDX source, we're coming to kind of our first package directory, and you see it says namespace and the little angle brackets. That's because what you're going to name this directory is the namespace prefix from your managed package. So rather than using Force app, which is the default, let's be very specific. Use your namespace prefix so that it's very clear that that package directory essentially is the container for all of the metadata that goes into your managed package. Now, there's a couple more things you should have in terms of package directories. One of them is this unpackaged package directory. And what this is unpackaged Salesforce DX source. This is development metadata that you need as a developer, but you do not want going into your managed package. Good example would be developer-friendly settings like, I know when I start up a new developer org, first thing I do, actually any org, is I change the session timeout from 2 hours to 24 hours. It's a little convenience thing for me. Not in production, obviously, but in my dev environments. So rather than having to do that every single time, there's actually a security settings, session settings metadata that you can put in that unpackaged directory, and it does a great job of helping to configure my local environment without being part of the managed package. Another example would be any kind of org-based developer tools, like if you've got some demo reset scripts, or you've got some static classes that you use while you're developing to touch certain parts of your app or make certain changes that make development easier. Again, great things to put in unpackaged. Then we've got untracked. Untracked, this is a place where you can put metadata that you want synchronized with a Scratch org, but that you as an individual developer don't want getting committed to the VCS. It's basically a good place to work on experimental code. Now let's look at another thing that if you're going full-blown Salesforce DX, you really want to have some continuous integration added to the mix. So there's going to be some kind of CI config that you're going to have. Now, this SFDX-Falcon model uses Circle CI, but again, I'll take a moment to remind everyone that you can use Salesforce DX with any CI provider. In fact, there's a great bit on how to connect to Travis CI in the trailhead that talks about getting started with Salesforce DX. So keep that in mind. Dev tools. This is where we start to move outside of just a couple of recommendations on directory structure to giving you something that's going to help you build faster and help make your developers' lives easier. Basically, dev tools is a place to store configurable shell scripts that help automate your common development or deployment tasks. If you follow the model that we're going to show you, you can actually have core scripts that don't change, that are tracked in version control, and then you can have local configuration options that are not tracked in VCS, but which help your developers, customize the actions of these scripts for their local environment. And then finally, let's close things out. Last two folders I'm going to talk to you about here, and then we get to move on. Data and temp. You're probably going to need a data folder. This is a place to keep files like CSV files, S-object trees, etc. Maybe even anonymous Apex classes that the CLI would run. Anything that would be used to set up data within your Scratch org. So when you rebuild that Scratch org, as a developer, you're getting it ready to go and ready to be used. And then finally, temp's going to store output from scripts and CLI commands. It's local use only. It's not tracked by VCS, but it's something that your project should have. Okay, so all of that was great, but we still haven't really gotten into how to fix that happy soup problem yet. And remember we said that Salesforce DX makes it easier to organize your source, and that's true. But the hard part, and this is where you're going to have to think through things for yourself, is how do we actually want to segment things? And here's our recommendation. You should try to segment things based on Force.com enterprise design patterns. So if we look at what's in your code, everybody's got schema, right? Hopefully you've got some domain logic and utility logic that sits on top of that schema. And then if you've built things well, you can have service logic that utilizes all of that. And if you've built your application, if you've architected it with this kind of enterprise design pattern, it makes it very easy to add feature after feature after feature, because everything's using kind of a core stack internally within your app. Now, how do we map that into the package directory structure? And here's how you do it. So here we are back. We're looking at this time now that namespace folder. Remember, this was the package directory. This is the place that's going to keep all of your metadata for your managed package. And within that, we now have this main module, right? You've all seen Force app main default. So that structure is going to be there. Anytime you pull metadata from your org. So we keep that, and that's basically where your app's core is going to reside. Now, if you have those three layers, schema, domain logic, utility logic, and service logic, if you have all of that inside of this main module, then when packaging 2 comes along, that becomes your core package. That becomes one of the second generation packages that you're going to be able to compose together to form your overall app. You'll also see that we have these feature modules. Again, everything's in the same, it's all in the same package directory. So this is all going to end up getting mushed together and put into your first generation package just the way it is now, only you're getting some logical separation on disk, and hopefully you're also making sure that you've got dependencies that go one way. So features depend on what's in main, but main doesn't depend on things in features. So that if you were to erase all 4 of those features and just build main, that would work. And then you could pull back in feature 1, feature 2, feature 3, and build them on top of that main. That's going to be a way to give you that feature-based development. And then again, when packaging 2 comes, all of this gets to come together and be broken apart as individual second-generation packages that fit under the same namespace. Okay, so you've been very patient with the slides. Thank you. We are just about to the demo. Before we get into it, just as a reminder, what we're going to see, we're going to put all of this stuff together. We spent a lot of time on looking at what's in this, what you could do with your source code, and now we're going to move into some source-based development mixed with some declarative development. We're going to see Git pushes, we're going to see pull requests, we're going to see some CI, and we're going to hopefully see it all reach the packaging org. Oops. And with that, sorry, let me set the stage a little bit before I hand off to Peter. So for our demo, Peter and I took on the persona of an ISV partner, and we have created a component called FSC Drive Wealth. There's a service called Drive Wealth that lets you purchase financial instruments like stocks, and we can do that right in Salesforce by connecting to that system. And one of the features within that is this ability to look up a stock symbol so you can start to place an order. But the problem is if I start to place an order and I wanted to see another quote, I really don't have access in my app as it is currently to that symbol lookup. I actually have to start again, and it kind of breaks me out of that order flow. If I actually look at another account that doesn't yet have its Drive Wealth account configured, I don't even have the option to create an order, so I can't even do a symbol lookup here. So I want to change that, and Peter, you've been doing some work, I think, to help make this a little bit better, right?
Correct. So if you want to give me control.
I will. Let me pass things off to Peter.
Let me know when you can see my screen.
Yep, I can see it.
Okay, so within this dev session, what I want to do is add a tab to our application that allows our customer admins to enable this feature. We want to roll this stock search component out in a controlled manner and get some adoption feedback from our customers. So first thing I want to do is create the scratch org so I can go in and add that tab. So I can create the scratch org through CLI commands, but usually after you do that, you have to do some manual setup as well, maybe load data, assign user permissions. And this gets to the advantage of the DX CLI. It's totally scriptable. And that's where Vivek was talking about dev tools. You can create shell scripts that combine a lot of CLI commands together. So here I'm going to go in and rebuild my scratch org. And as you can see, it's fully documented. It's asking me to make sure, check my options are set up correctly. And this will go through, delete the scratch org, verify if it's deleted, recreate it, and push the source back up to the scratch org. And as you can see, these shell scripts are very well documented. It echoes all the steps that it's doing, and even the parameters that it's using are fully documented. So this is a really great learning tool. If you're not comfortable with the command line interface and working with Git, as I was originally starting this project, this framework and this package that we're delivering is really a great learning tool for you. So as you can see, it's starting to push the metadata up to the Scratch org. It's going to take some time to do that. It's gone through that. It's assigning a user permission, and now it's going to set up the Scratch org. So now the Scratch org is created. Let's open it up. So immediately, CLI opens up the Scratch org. I don't have to remember usernames and passwords. The first thing I'm going to do, and just for this demo session, is set one of the session settings just so the screens refresh in a more timely manner. Again, as Vivek mentioned earlier, you can have a lot of settings set up in the repository that automate how the Scratch org is defined, but this is one of those settings that's currently not available within the CLI.
Yeah, and I think it's not so much the CLI. It's that the metadata API. I don't believe those caching settings are exposed through it, and so I think once that comes, then it'll the CLI will be able to pick it up. But it's something that the DX team is aware of, and they're working on it.
Good clarification. Thanks. So I'm just going to set up a test account here so that I can start testing the feature parameter.
I guess, Peter, while you're doing that, I'll just take a second to comment that what Peter's is demonstrating here is, he's showing the fact that he's going to do development declaratively in just a minute, and we've got a mix of code-based development, declarative development, and it's all going to end up coming down in the same package.
Yeah, and what I'm doing at the moment is I'm going to add the console tab to our application. So this is going to allow our customer admins to enable that feature. So while I do this, to talk about feature parameters and feature management, again, it gives you fine-grained control on how functionality is introduced to your customers. If I go back to my app and refresh the page, I can see the console tab here. If I open it up, there's no features. So taking a step back, feature parameters are a two-step process, and this follows the Salesforce best practice on how we introduce new functionality to our customers and partners. We don't just dump it on you. It's really, we enable it, we permit you to use it through the licenses, and then it's up to you to opt in and actually enable it for your end users.
So Peter, a good example of that would be, recently with Developer Hub, actually.
Correct.
Right. When Salesforce DX was released, the ability to enable Developer Hub, showed up in a lot of people's orgs, right? And if you search for Dev Hub, you'd see it. You could hit enable. So that was essentially Salesforce, and permitting that in the org is what made the option show up, right? And then the admin actually clicking enable is that second part of this process, you're saying.
Exactly. Now, this was when feature management was introduced, there was some disconnect as to how developers would actually develop and test it, because the feature parameter UI is only available on the package org. How can I test this out without deploying my code to the packaging org and starting making changes there? And this is where the metadata API really shines. I've defined a feature parameter within the metadata API, and I can simulate how this is going to react when I actually push this out to my customers. So I've got a parameter here, and I'm going to change this from false to true. So what this is simulating is me enabling this, me permitting this parameter on my license management org as a partner. And then that makes that feature available to my customers. So I made the change locally. So how do I push this up to the Scratch org. I use a Salesforce DX push command, and this will push this change up to the Scratch org. So let's go back into the Scratch org, and I'll just refresh this page. And lo and behold, the feature is available for me as an admin to enable for my end users. So let me just make that available. And if I go back into my account and check the DriveWell subtab, now I can see our component is available. So I've tested our component being available. I've tested the feature management process works as we predicted. So now let me go back in here. Now the first thing I want to do is just reset this back to false, because that's how we want it defaulted in our package. The next thing I need to do is pull that change where I added the console tab to the application. I want to pull this back down into our source repository. So again, I do an SFDX pull. And behind the scenes, the SFDX CLI is monitoring my local code, as well as monitoring any changes on the Scratch org. So I'm ready to commit this, but I'm sure, Vivek, you would want me to run some tests.
Yes, please.
All right. So again, these dev tools allow you to create and group a lot of CLI commands together. So I'm going to run the tests. And again, very user-friendly. Make sure your options are set correctly, and then steps through all the tests that it's running.
And while we wait for that, just a quick note about all the dev tools. So these are all going to be available as part of the SFDX-Falcon, playbook or template, I guess is what that repository is called. You might already be doing some of these things. Hopefully you can pull some ideas out of what we've done, and definitely if you've got new ideas, we would love to see pull requests. Excuse me. But the main point is that for if you've wanted to do this kind of automation but haven't yet had a model to do it, that's where we're really hoping to help out. That if you can see how we've done it in one way, that could get you a leg up and on doing it a way that makes sense for you.
Right. Okay. Obviously, tests all passed, so now I'm ready to commit this. So first I'll do a git add, and that just adds my changes into like the Git stack. And next thing I'll do a git commit. So this is actually saving my change into Git, and it's all managed. Now the final thing I want to do is, this is all local on my laptop. The rest of the team doesn't know any changes that I've made. So I want to push this up into the GitHub repository. So I do a git push origin, which is the GitHub repository and the branch that I'm working on. And again, I want to stress that while this may look confusing, once you go through the steps and start doing this again and again, it becomes very much second nature.
And I think Peter, it's fair to mention that we've probably got in our audience today two types of ISVs. There are those out there who've already implemented CI in some way, and so a lot of this is going to be familiar for you folks. But I think Peter's comments are really useful for people who are just starting to think about getting in or putting on continuous integration into their developer workflow. It's a little bit of a new world. There's a lot of benefits, so as Peter said, don't if you are new to it, don't be too intimidated by it. It does become second nature quicker than you realize.
Yep. So I'm in GitHub, and what I want to do is I want to go into the branch and create a pull request. So this basically just tells the tech lead on my team that I completed the work. Just writing in some comments here because we all know how we should do comments. And I'm going to create a pull request, and then that way I'll hand it back to Vivek, and you can verify and make sure this is ready to roll into the master.
All right. Okay, so as Peter said, he built up that pull request. I guess, Peter, can you see my screen? I'll make sure that.
Yes, I can.
Okay, awesome. So if I actually do a refresh here, I'll see that there's a new pull request. Again, if you're new to this, to the kind of nomenclature here with Git, a pull request, Peter has basically said, I've done something that I think is useful. I am requesting that you pull that into master. I can see what his commits were, which is great. I saw him run the tests, so that's good. But we're going to have some CI in a second, anyways. So even if he didn't test, we'd still be able to catch any problems. Okay, so I've accepted his pull request. It's been successfully merged and closed. And what that does is kick off a CI build, and we're using Circle CI. And if I go into Circle CI and take a look, there is a workflow that we've built where essentially what's happening is there's some setup things here where basically we're doing authentication, making sure that we can authenticate to the various orgs that we need to, like the dev hub and actually the packaging org, because once we get through testing against two different org shapes, our end goal is to actually create a beta package version upload. Now, it looks straightforward here, but there's a lot of stuff going on. The fact that we've built a CI configuration that's going to hopefully fail fast here if any authentication failures happening, and then simultaneously test against different org shapes so that we make sure that if we have different customers, our code is not going to have unforeseen problems. Maybe say if person accounts are installed in one org versus not installed, or territory management or something like that. Any of the various options that some of your customers might have, you can model those, and you can test them simultaneously with the way that we've built out the configuration. Now, sometimes things don't go well, and let's take a look at that. And this is actually a build that had failed, but not intentionally. I had made a mistake and forgot to do a force source pull to get metadata out of my Scratch org and into my repository. So all of my tests work when I ran them locally, but they didn't when I did continuous integration. And I can see that. I can see where the error was, and it's a good real world proof of why a good CI process can be useful. Now, this is going to take a little while to build, so I'm going to show you what it would have looked like if it did build successfully. So this is a successful workflow build. I'm going to go ahead and go. Actually, maybe I'll pop in here for a second, checking the time. Okay, so here is a build that succeeded. We've got everything hooked in so it knows which tests ran. There are artifacts if we want to look at the test results that were saved. The configuration for all of this it's complex. There's a lot of meat to it, but as with the other things we've done, we've made it in such a way that hopefully you can look at it and adapt it for your uses. There's probably a whole webinar we could do just about continuous integration, and it's one of the things that we'll do a deeper dive into at some point. But if I go back to this workflow and even look at the end result, it says that one of the things we did was we actually created and uploaded a new managed beta package version. And I don't think It's going to take a couple more minutes to do it here. So what I can do is I can at least show you the end result of the prior runs. And so if you see all of these 1.2 beta 1 through 10, none of these were uploaded by me manually. All of these were uploaded by the CI process as beta release packages or beta packages. Now, technically, you can use the CLI to do a managed release and to upload a release version. I don't recommend that. We don't recommend that, because it's, I'm sure most of you have had the pain of uploading, or may have, hopefully you haven't, but you might have had the pain of uploading a managed release where there was something in it that you needed changed, and then you had to call support to deprecate that managed release. It can be painful. So our recommendation is, from a CI perspective, if you're going to automate this, automate only to managed beta, and have a human being come and take a look and do the release upload. It just feels a little safer that way. Okay, so I think that's it. We've gone end to end, right? When we started with the scratch orders, did pushes into Git, pull requests. We saw how CI works, and then we saw all of this eventually. Not only the metadata get into a packaging org, but a package version be uploaded as well. And so to recap, really the time for ISVs to start adopting Salesforce DX, it really is now. And hopefully the model that we've given you, and even though we've talked through things very quickly, what you're going to want to get your hands on all of this, and I'm going to give you something in just a second to do that. But hopefully the model that we give is going to help you, dive into that end-to-end development with DX. Organizing your metadata in the way that we talked about earlier, and organizing your application logic is a really good way to get ready for packaging 2, because you're going to have to do that anyways. If you're going to break apart your logic into multiple packages, you may as well start thinking about that now, because it's going to be a while to refactor. And then finally, 3 things you can do to get started today. And it's really this, starts with the big, huge bit.ly link up there. Please fork our SFDX-Falcon template. Fork it, test drive it, use it for your, for your projects. Again, we are welcoming pull requests. So if you build something that you think would be useful to have in the main template, let us know when we'll put it back in there. This is a labor of love from the Salesforce DX TE expert team, and we definitely want to help make this as useful for ISVs as possible. If you get a chance, you can actually clone and test drive the demo that we showed you. It's the repo is public right now. I was just working on that this morning, and there's a couple of little bugs in it that I need to fix for you, but give that a couple days, and that should be ready to go. So if you want to actually go through everything that Peter did with feature management, and even the CI integration, that'll be a great place to dive deep there. And then finally, over in the bottom left, you can see that SFDX-Falcon group link. We've created a group in the partner community, which reminds me I need to move it from unlisted to active. It's literally going to go active in a few minutes, but you can use that link and join that group. And if you have any feedback for us or have any questions about ISV adoption of Salesforce DX, please reach out to us there and let us know. With that, I'm going to keep this slide up while we start going to questions. And let's see, there are a lot of them.
There are a lot. I tried to get to them, and then they just started piling up. But one question we did have from Canis was, will it be possible to remove duplicate features from a managed 2GP, so second generation packaging?
So with developer controlled packaging, you've got a lot of flexibility. I'm not sure if they're referring to a dev controlled package with managed 2GP, or kind of the classic form of managed second generation package. So I'll tell you what, if we'll take that up in the partner community, and if we can get clarity on the question, then I'll also get the answer there in the community. And moving forward, I see a couple more that are interesting. One was about debugging. I think you answered that, but I'm going to share this with the webinar audience as well, so it's on the recording. So there was a question about, do scratch orgs let you debug? And the answer is yes. You actually, because scratch orgs are built on sandbox pods, they do support the debugger, but you're going to have a license for the debugger in order to use that. And also, only at this point, Visual Studio Code allows you to debug against scratch orgs. I believe that other tooling vendors are working on adding that capability to their products. So talk to them if your IDE of choice is something else. But I think that scratch org debugging is one of the coolest things for ISVs, and it's one of the best evolutions of that debugging feature that we've had, because it finally makes the ability to debug Apex useful to ISVs, because you can do it in scratch orgs instead of being locked to sandboxes like before.
One of the questions I wanted to bring up was kind of interesting because it gets to the whole Git and SFDX philosophy. The question is, the only option seems to be to push or pull everything. Other IDEs allow for individual components syncing with the developer org pre-DX. So Vivek, I'm not aware that you can't push or pull individual components, but my view is that's the whole point. Because the DX is so tied now with the version control, it really allows you to dedicate branches to specific pieces of functionality. So if I'm developing something, I can create a branch, develop against that, push and pull that to my scratch org, and commit that as a unit without having to worry about different components being out of sync between my scratch org or my local repository.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That's one way to do it. Okay, I see. Peter, did that? Sorry, the answer was very brief, but I agree with what you were saying. Was there anything else you wanted to talk on that one? Okay. I see another question. Someone says, why Circle CI instead of Travis? So Circle CI, for me, I was just looking for another option so that we can show multiple options, because we already have Travis CI, in our Trailhead, and I actually have come to quite enjoy using Circle CI, and so now that I've built some expertise there, there's a pretty good model for setting things up there. Definitely happy to to work with anyone who might want to do the same kind of thing with Travis, and we can build that into the framework as well. So we're just getting started. We definitely want to be platform and tool agnostic, because it's one of the benefits of Salesforce DX. But hopefully that helps. Danny, any other questions that look good? I'm scanning through the questions as well. There's
just a comment that the Millennium Falcon was a hunk of junk that kept breaking down. It was built to be fast but not reliable. But I didn't want to start a fight during the webinar, so I left that one.
Yeah. Okay. So look, yes, the Millennium Falcon, was built to be fast but not reliable. I get that, but
it still works. Got the job
Salesforce DX is actually quite a bit more reliable than the Millennium Falcon was, and every bit as fast. And so and it's getting better all the time. So that's what I'll say to that. Let's see. Oh, there was one question. So we have two apps. First is a single package, and you've got continuous integration, development, which works great. The second is an extension package. What's the right way to structure this? And this is challenging because really the right way to do development on your extension package is to have your base package done first. So it's almost like your CI needs to be broken up into two two big chunks, right? You've got a process that's going to build out your base package, and that's got to work and be successful. And then you want once that code has been built, you can have a scratch org that that your extension logic is built on. The reason why you can't mush it all together is because the way that your extension package has to call the base package, there's you're going to have to use that. You're going to have to use the namespace, right? You're going to have to call the namespace code in your base package, namespace methods. And so it's almost difficult to build an extension without having, your base as a package installed in the scratch org. So, unfortunately, no easy answer there. But most CI tools will have a staged type of development where you can do multiple jobs in a particular build, and I think that's going to be what you're going to have to do. You're going to have some kind of ordered jobs, and it's unfortunately just going to be a little bit complex. Okay, with that, it's 10:01. Apologies for not getting to all these questions, but we do have all these questions recorded, and we're going to take the time to answer whatever we can inside of the partner community. I wanted to thank everybody for joining us today. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Danny. And please, as a reminder, fill out the survey. Let us know what we did well, what we could do better. And thank you very much.